Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, everyone. This is Marty McDermott, the president of Franchise Interviews, and I can't start today's show without talking about the ISO 10002. You know, some people just love to complain, but companies have a responsibility to care. The International Organization for Standardization, ISO, has revised ISO 10002, the standard for complaint handling. This document enables organizations to foster a customer-focused environment open to feedback, heightening their customer satisfaction. You can get the ISO 10002 standard from the American National Standards Institute, ANSI, the U.S. member body of ISO. Visit ANSI.org/complain to learn more. That's ANSI.org/complain to learn more.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews. Welcome to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship. Listen to interviews with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys. And now, welcome your host, Marty McDermott, and Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the Frantrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Rochelle Clarke, and Rochelle is the founder of Succession Strength, Inc., a company that helps business owners protect their operations and transition them smoothly from owner to heir. She's also the author of 5 Critical Succession Conversations, a comprehensive guide for the family business. We're going to talk to Rochelle about that in just a moment on Franchise Interviews. So stick around because we have a great show.
Franchise Teacher.
Would you like to know how to franchise your concept or grow your franchise business?
Meet the experts at Franchise Teacher.
The goal of Franchise Teacher is to teach, coach, consult, and advise. The team of experts at Franchise Teacher will evaluate your business model and present you with a winning business strategy.
Franchise Teacher will help you decide whether or not your concept works and if it's franchisable. Franchise Teacher is proud to have over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors.
Franchise Teacher are developers of over a dozen franchise systems, which include brick and mortar as well as home-based concepts of nearly 3,000 combined franchise locations.
Whether you need to add more units or get more customers, Franchise Teacher can help. We will teach. Franchise Teacher will help you learn our proven system. Coach. Franchise Teacher will help you provide a game plan to succeed. Consult. Franchise Teacher will make sure you stay on track. And advise. Franchise Teacher will help you learn from our over 30 years of experience in franchising as both franchisees and franchisors. Take advantage of our free, no-obligation phone consultation. Simply go to franchiseteacher.com or call us at 561-385-3032. That's franchiseteacher.com. Or call us at 561-385-3032.
Hi, this is Connie McDermott, Administrative Assistant for Franchise Interviews, LLC, and you're listening to Franchise Interviews.
Franchise Interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to a very special edition of Franchise Interviews, where for over 14 years now, we've been asking the Frantrepreneurs one-on-one. I'm your host, Marty McDermott. I'm the president of Franchise Interviews, and as we were saying earlier, we have a great show today. Well, we're meeting with Rochelle Clarke, and Rochelle is the founder of Succession Strength, Inc., a company that helps business owners protect their operations and transition them smoothly from owner to heir. Hi, Rochelle. How are you? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Marty. Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here. It's great to be here.
Oh, thank you, Rochelle. I'm happy you're here as well today. We always like to ask our guests, where are you calling from this morning, Rochelle?
I am calling from Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Oh, fantastic. Wow. How's the weather there today, Rochelle?
Well, it's nice, sunny, but cold. So I'm happy that it's sunny because it's typically rainy. And I usually split my time between Europe and the U.S. But, of course, because of the situation that we're in at the moment, I am on location in Amsterdam.
Well, that's fantastic. I know you're from the United States. It's a little cold here on the East Coast today, Rochelle, so you're not missing much. It's cold and windy, so you're not missing that much.
That's good to know.
It is, absolutely. So as we were saying earlier, Rochelle, we did a little introduction. You're from Succession Strength Inc., and maybe I thought, you could tell us a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely. So, our tagline is that we keep good businesses in business for generations. And we typically do that in two ways. One is through business continuity planning, and then we also do it by focusing on succession and exit planning for these businesses. So it's protecting what the business has and then helping them to pass it on to the next generation.
I think it's a wonderful service, Rochelle. I found that I made a big mistake many, many years ago. I got involved in a business in 1999, and I really didn't have a succession plan or an exit strategy. And unfortunately, when it came time to leave the business, it had to go to court, of course, and it got really messy. And so I see so many benefits of your service. Do you find that, from all your experience, that, many businesses, when they first start out, Rochelle, they don't think about these things initially?
They don't. Sadly, they don't. And, Marty, this is where a lot of the value of the business is eroded. You've worked so hard to build up a business, which is a feat in and of itself. But when there's not a plan in place to really harvest this value in a safe way, then is when you can lose a lot of it through the courts, typically.
Right, of course, absolutely. So maybe you could tell our listeners, Rochelle, why is business continuity planning relevant for franchisees, which is pretty much the majority of our listeners, we call them aspiring franchipreneurs, Rochelle. They kind of want it, they know that they want to get into a franchise, so this is pretty much our target audience.
Yes, absolutely. So, Marty, here's the thing. When it comes to a business, right, and a franchise, business continuity plans are typically put in place to help protect that business from short-term unplanned events. Right. So you can think of it like a will for the business, right? Or it's the blueprint for the business's operations that someone else within the business can run with in the event that something were to happen to that key member of the organization, whether it's the owner themselves or another key employee.
It's interesting, Rochelle. It's the theme of our show, of course, as you can imagine, last year, was COVID. It seemed like that was the main topic, and of course, so many businesses had to, of course, pivot. Some of them, of course, didn't make it. But I'm sure that, COVID has changed the mindset of probably all types of businesses to some extent, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. And even before COVID, it was such a task for me. The business continuity arm of my operations used to be, as they would say, the redheaded stepchild. No offense to redheads, but this was almost the ignored portion of the business, just because folks didn't get it. Right. But as a result of the pandemic, now there's so much more focus, and people are aware of the fact that there is a way for them to protect their operations in the event that something were to happen. And now there's that, with that greater awareness, there's more interest for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the history of Continuity Strength, Rochelle.
Absolutely. So Continuity Strength is our online business continuity planning platform. And it was essentially born out of the business continuity advisory services that we were doing, advising that we were doing. What we did, Marty, we recognized that there was a barrier for smaller businesses who either had no idea about business continuity planning or they just didn't have the resources to hire an outside advisor to put one in place for the business, because for a smaller business to have an advisor come in from the outside, it can be a little bit intrusive, and
Right.
So, but what we found is that these smaller businesses tended to be disproportionately affected by the negative effects of a disruptive event, as we have seen with COVID. These are the ones that are more likely to close, right? So this is why we said, you know what, let's make this a little bit more accessible, particularly to small and medium-sized businesses. And we did this by developing this online continuity strength platform for businesses to create their own plans online and have that peace of mind that they can respond confidently and recover quickly from unplanned events. And it works with businesses all over the world.
So we kind of mentioned the pandemic, Rochelle, but, you know, what would be some like other disruptions that maybe franchisees need to be aware of? Yeah,
so Marty, the statistics say that 1 in every 2 businesses will suffer from one of the 5 Ds during its life cycle. And the 5 Ds, each D is a major disruption.
Right.
The 5 Ds are unexpected death, disability, divorce, distress, or disagreement.
Wow.
So the pandemic that we're going through at the moment can be considered the distressing situation. So that's distress. Many businesses, as you know, probably have folded because of, I don't know for your business, how things ended up, how you ended up coming to the point of exit, but disagreements tends to be a major disruption as well.
Right.
So when we're not talking pandemics, those are the 5 Ds that we typically ensure that businesses are prepared to handle using business continuity planning.
Do you think it's people are afraid to talk about it, Rochelle, in the beginning? Is that what it is? You know, I mean, you know, we don't like to talk about this. Like you compared it to like a will, which is a great analogy. You know, we don't like to talk about, you know, what if somebody dies, or, you know, what if there is, you know, a divorce? Because, you know, a lot of our listeners as well, they're a lot of like husband and wife teams. You know what I mean? They get into the business together, and then you're right. You don't think about that, and then you say, okay, well, the divorce rate is so high. I guess it's still around 40-50%. You know, that these things can happen. And I've heard all of these stories. I came to know a woman many years ago where her husband owned several different cleaners, and when he passed, there was no plan, you know, and she had to take over, and it was horrible for her, you know. I mean, it was terrible. And the same thing, I also know a franchisee who also owned a Blimpie husband and wife franchise team. They ended up getting divorced about 3-4 years into it, and it was just such a mess. And I think it's so wonderful that you kind of bring this being a proactive approach, you know, to as opposed to reactive, you know, and say, okay, now what do we do? You know, it's so important. I imagine you probably have hundreds of stories too, Rochelle, you know, that you've experienced over the years. Maybe you could talk like some interesting examples of, you know, businesses that have put, you know, these things in place.
Absolutely. So, I mean, just like you're saying, Marty, my history with this is actually from my own family's business. When the owner passed away, daughter wasn't ready to take over, but she was being prepared. She wasn't ready to take over. So there we were, frantically planning not only a funeral, but also trying to figure out, wait, how does this business run?
Right.
How do we pay the employees? Who has access to all of this?
Right.
So, yes, you know, my business continuity advisory services comes from the fact that, hey, I've lived through a disruption like this, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Right.
But some of the companies that have come, and this is actually surprising. I got a call from a young lady. She was actually in her early 20s, let's say 24. And she came to me and she said, you know, Rochelle, I need some help. I said, okay, how can I be of assistance?
Right.
And she said, you know what, I unexpectedly got sick and I had to be in hospital for two weeks, and I recognized that this business can't run without me.
Right.
Nothing was possible.
Wow.
So that is when we took a step back, but it comes down to that awareness, right? You don't know what you don't know. So fortunately, she knew that this was along the lines of what I did, so she was asking for advice, and I was able to say, yeah, okay, what you need is called a business continuity plan. Yeah. I have had other situations where there was this young father who owned a factory, a small factory manufacturing some food, I can't remember what food item it was, but he called and said, you know, I have a 5-year-old and I have a newborn baby. My wife is in accounting, but she's taken a little break at the moment. I
Right.
need to know that if anything were to happen to me, that there's a plan in place so that she can still keep this business going, right?
Right.
Or someone else in my business. And that's where we said,
Wow.
okay, what you need is a business continuity plan. Let's put one in place. And then, of course, and I think this is going to be more popular these days, where I got a call from someone saying, my wife's dad, my father-in-law, it's a family-owned business. The father-in-law is in charge. He doesn't want to retire. He doesn't want to let go, but we are scared that anything can happen to him, and we would have no idea what to do with his business. So it really runs the spectrum.
It's interesting, Rochelle, because I was reading, all about your background. I mean, your website has, so much information on it, and you're also an expert on family business, which is complicated in itself, isn't it? It was funny because I was reading like one paragraph, and it's interesting how, when you have several children, it always seems like the mindset for some reason is, okay, you pass it on to the oldest child, right? If they're involved in the business. But that's not always the best approach, is it?
Nope. No, definitely not. It's usually the one that's most qualified. And this is what we work with families in business to really understand. If your intention really is to keep this business in business, then you have to find the most, and sometimes that could not even be in the family, Marty. There is a difference between someone who owns the business and someone who runs it. Right. So
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I studied family business many years ago at a school called Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey, Rochelle, and I was just so fascinated with the topic because I never realized how complicated family business can be, especially when you're dealing with multiple children in the business, So when I was reading, all your different articles and things like that, I said, wow, this is really great content. So you kind of mentioned some of them, Rochelle, but, what are some of the characteristics of businesses that use the online continuity strength platform to create their own business continuity plans instead of going to an advisor? Yeah,
so these tend to, Marty, to be the uncomplicated businesses. If it's a relatively uncomplicated business, it can be small or medium-sized, but maybe you do one thing and you do that one thing really well. You have your restaurant and you're running it, right? You're making widgets and you're selling them. That's fine. Now, the online, and this is the majority of businesses, and this is also one of the barriers that we saw. These smaller businesses are not going to really dedicate the resources to bringing in an external consultant for this. Now, if you are a conglomerate with multiple lines of business, then is when we say the complexity of your business is much more than an online tool can handle. So perhaps it may be worthwhile bringing someone in to really ensure that everything is covered. But the online plan is absolutely sufficient and very, very thorough for small and medium-sized businesses that are uncomplicated.
That's fantastic. And what types of things are included in a continuity strength plan, Rochelle?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's essentially a one-stop shop. So it's a one-stop blueprint for keeping the business in operation. Everything in one document. So it's who to call in the event of an interruption, where to find the key documents, how to keep paying bills and how to keep getting paid, as well as what are the key tasks that go into running this business and what are some potential workarounds. Yeah. So it's all of that information in one document that you can hand off to someone, if it's a husband handing it off to a spouse or husband or wife handing it off to a spouse or other key member of the staff, just so that they have that peace of mind that, okay, if anything were to happen, the business can still keep going so that we can still, have this money coming in and we can still maintain our lifestyles while we figure out whatever the disruption is.
It was interesting when I was reading, some of your content that you have on the website, Rochelle. It's interesting. I think a lot of times we don't even think about how many people a business affects, right? Like when we think of stakeholders, right? Like we, of course, the customers, right? The suppliers. I mean, it really, one single business can affect hundreds of people, couldn't it?
Yes. I mean, you have your suppliers whom you pay, everyone, who relies on the income of your business. One thing that we say is, if your business is just a lifestyle thing for a hobby and you're the only one who relies on the income, you don't need a continuity plan. Right. You don't. Agreed. You really don't. Yeah. But the moment you have one other person relying on this income, it can be your family, it can be your employees, whomever, just put a plan in place for that peace of mind.
Sure, absolutely. So, from all your years of experience, Rochelle, I mean, because you've worked with, so many entrepreneurs over the course of time, what advice would you give to our listeners, or, that people who are interested in one day purchasing a franchise from everything you've learned up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, listen, unexpected events or disruptions, they're unexpected. So as much as you can say, when that happens, I will, no, you don't know how you'll react, because really the emotions are probably going through the roof, and everyone's losing their minds around you, and you're probably losing money in this business. The thing is that disruptions take resources away from growing your business. Right. Handling disruptions takes resources away from growing the business. So if you have any growth aspirations for your business at all, just ensure that you have a plan in place to help you respond confidently and recover quickly from disruptions. Now, you're not going to be able to avoid them completely. I mean, because that's the nature of an unplanned event or disruption. Right. You can't avoid it, but you can certainly minimize the negative effects, and that's what we're going for, so that you're not losing as much in terms of handling this disruption, and more can then go into growing the business.
I've always felt too, Rochelle, that it's better to talk about these things in the beginning, particularly when you're in a calm state, right? I mean, as opposed to I always think for myself, I'll speak personally for myself, is if it's a stressful situation, I'll always make the wrong decision, But if I'm in a calm state and I'm thinking about everything and I have time to reflect on it, that's the time to do it, But when you're in that reactive state, a lot of people will make very poor decisions, won't they?
And Marty, you bring this up, but this is spot on, particularly when it comes to partnerships. So I've seen this in terms of married couples, but also in terms of friends or co-founders who have gone into business together. And the thing is, you put a plan in place like this just in the event that something were to happen. The worst case scenario is for you to be trying to figure out how to run this business if you're in a disagreement with the other person who knows so much about the business, because then the attempt to sabotage the efforts, that's when that attempt is higher. Right? Right. So exactly. Put a plan in place so that anything can happen. Whatever happens, you can deal with it. The time to do it is not usually in the middle of a disagreement, because then you don't have the good faith of all parties at the table. Yeah, sadly. That's
well said. That's very powerful. So what are the plans, Rochelle, for the future of Succession Strength and Continuity Strength platform? I mean, where do you see yourself in the organization maybe 3 years, 5 years down the road?
Yeah, Marty, that's a really good question. Look, we're going to continue to work to keep good businesses in business. That's been our passion from day one, and we continue to do it. We're happy that small and medium businesses are using the online Continuity Strength platform to protect their operations. And we're seeing more and more of that now, given what folks have lived through. But our focus is also on the next wave of disruptions. And we saw an inkling of this before the pandemic hit. And the next wave of disruption that we were planning for will come with the retirement or the retiring of baby boomer owners or leaders in businesses.
Right. That makes sense.
Right? So we do have programs in place to help these businesses transition smoothly from one generation to the next. So we'll continue those efforts. But listen, it really is growing a business, as you know, is a feat in and of itself. So the question is, how do we protect what we have to ensure that we can harvest that value when we're ready?
That's terrific. This might be, this is our 14th year of doing this show, Rochelle, and like you said, it's almost like 750 podcasts. This might be one of the most important shows we've ever done. I mean, it's interesting that I've never, in all these years, spoken about this topic on the show, and that's why I was so happy, to interview you today and have you on the show, So what's the best way, Rochelle, for our listeners to get more information on all your different services, and even the book, if you want to plug the book too, by the way. I'm going to pick up the book, by the way. But, you can plug all those things if you like.
Absolutely. So all of the information on my company, Succession Strength, can be found on our website, www.successionstrength.com, and the online platform for creating your own business continuity plan is continuitystrength.com. So they can visit either of those and find all of the information. We have all of the products that are on successionstrength.com. So, yeah, we're easy to be found.
That's terrific. Well, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed talking to you today, Rochelle, and I'd love to invite you back in the future, as you continue to grow, because as I mentioned, this is such an important service. So it was great to talk to you today, Rochelle.
Likewise, Marty. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Rochelle. This has been my pleasure, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Coming up on segment 2, you're going to hear what every Franchipreneur needs to know before buying a franchise. We're going to play a clip from our popular Great Quotes in Franchising podcast right here on Franchise Interviews.
Franchisers, are you looking to reach aspiring entrepreneurs looking to buy a franchise? Are you looking to reach a highly educated audience on franchising? For over 8 years, Franchise Interviews has been giving an up-close, behind-the-scenes look at franchising and entrepreneurship through our website, franchiseinterviews.com, where you can hear and read interviews as well as get tips from some of the most successful sources in franchising. Our weekly franchise radio show where each week you get to hear a new interview with franchisers, franchisees, franchise authors, franchise experts, and attorneys, and our podcast, Great Quotes in Franchising. For more information, go to franchiseinterviews.com or call us at 610-905-2919. That's 610-905-2919.
Hi everyone, this is Marty McDermott from Franchise Interviews, and welcome to another edition of Great Quotes in Franchising, where each podcast you get to hear a great quote in franchising. We've been hosting Franchise Interviews now over 8 years and over 400 shows, and during that time we've had some incredible quotes on our show. Today you're going to get to hear from Chris Simic, who is the founder of FranchiseTeacher.com, and Chris has over 30 years of business and franchise experience as an independent business owner, a franchisee, and a franchisor. And Chris said something very profound that we haven't heard on our show in over 8 years. He mentioned that you have to almost work harder to fail at franchising than to succeed in franchising, and he explains why.
Most people, about 90% I think I've seen, buy a business other than they first looked at.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, that's a big number too, isn't it, Chris? Most people, they go in with these certain expectations and they come out with something different, and I find that fascinating.
I absolutely, it never ceases to astound me, but I think that speaks to the value of franchising as a business model and a business method, because people don't have to be in something just because they know it. And quite candidly, sometimes getting involved in a business that you would rather do that you were not involved in allows you the luxury of taking a new career path and to develop something you never would have had the opportunity to had it not been systematized and prioritized for you. In franchising it's said that you have to really almost work harder to fail than to succeed, because if you have a good franchise system, if you follow directions, you have to almost purposely not follow them to not do well.
That's true. That's fantastic. We have this great quotes in franchising. I think we're going to put that one in there, Chris. I think that's very original, and it's very true. What advice would you give to our listeners? We find that most of them, they're just beginning their search to buy a franchise, Chris, and we find that, most of them just simply, they don't even know where to begin, like you were saying. What advice would you give to them?
I do, when I speak to people looking at franchise, I give them 3 different pieces of advice. One, make sure you're looking for a business for the right reason. A lot of people have things happen in their life. They lose a job or something happens and they react and maybe say, well, okay, maybe I'll go buy a business. That may not be the reason to do it versus having the luxurious selectivity that here's my opportunity that was created by some adversity. Second thing is that they have to make sure that they are able to be franchisees, that not everybody is designed to be able to follow the systems, procedures, and the processes it takes to be a successful franchise owner. And then I tell them quite candidly is pick a couple of the industries and the price ranges that may have interest to you, and then kind of pin down from there, either using the resources of a consultant or a broker or a team member, or on their own. Either way, but I think that if they take their time, follow the steps, and do it for the right reasons, they'll be on a much smoother pathway to success in owning their own business.
That's well said. What's in the future then for Franchise Teacher, Chris? I mean, where do you see the company 3 to 5 years down the road?
Well, Marty, we've been extremely fortunate and blessed that the business has been around, through Century Franchise Group for many years. And our new franchiseteacher.com has taken off. We're representing right now, 7 plus brands. I think in 5 years, our focus will really be even more fine-tuned as the consumer or the prospective business owner is looking for more and more specific information. Breaking down to teach, coach, consult, and advise, I think will be a way for us to assist people in what they need. People, again, don't know what they don't know, but right. I think the information overload sometimes discourages people too early. They say, this is too much for me to process. But if we can break it down into bite-sized pieces, I think more and more people, especially the younger generation, who are looking for the advice and the information they want when they want it, I think is going to do nothing more than continue. Then our next business venture, which launches at the end of this year, is looking to capture all the different franchise brands around the world and put them into one place. So we're looking forward to a future. And franchising is going nowhere but growing. As you said for a long time too, the number of franchise opportunities, and the world's getting to be a smaller place. I think you're going to find a lot of opportunities coming in and going out of different marketplaces in different countries, accessible to more people.
That's fantastic. What's the best way, Chris, for our listeners to get more information on franchiseteacher.com? Obviously, franchiseteacher.com, but any numbers you'd like them to call or email addresses?
Well, actually, we appreciate www.franchiseteacher.com. And my business partner, Dave, and I offer them the free 1-hour consultation. Fill out the form and take advantage of it.
That's fantastic. I want to thank you again, Chris, for finally coming on the show. I've been following your career for a long time now, and I have just been very impressed with everything that you've done, So when I saw this, I mentioned to you, we don't typically call people to come on the show, but I had to have you specifically on the show. So it was an honor and a privilege to have you on the show today.
Marty, ditto, and again, congratulations on your PhD doctorate. I have read your thesis, and I would recommend it reading if people can get through
that's fantastic.
The information.
I really appreciate that you read it, too, because that's an honor coming from you, so that's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you again, Chris, and we'll be right back with more franchise interviews.
Franchise interviews. From Easton, Pennsylvania to Sydney, Australia, you're listening to Franchise Interviews. Franchise Interviews.